Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Flash, Season 9, Episode 11. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So I think it's actually really dope how they constructed this, making it so that this episode and the previous part are all happening at the same time. I mean, jumping ahead a little bit, it is a war on multiple fronts across the entire timeline, and so many fronts, because I'm assuming all the stuff that's happening with Eddie is going to be the end result. Like, that won't get, like, that part of all of this will be the final piece in the cog of, like, I mean, because it makes sense. Last episode was an attack in the past. This episode is attacking in the present day. I mean, I can only assume part 3 is an attack in the future. So what does that mean for part 4? That's going to be interesting, because I'm thinking like it culminates in part 4, which will be the series finale. But I'm so curious, like, where the battlefront's going to be in that situation, because I think like everything is going to come together in that moment. But either way, I thought it was so interesting. They're referencing like these cobalt isotopes that were found where Barry went missing, and apparently he's been gone for nearly, was it over 7 hours, or yeah, I think no, it was like nearly 8 hours. And so they're trying to figure out what happened to him. All of a sudden, Mark showing up, and I was immediately suspicious. I'm like, it feels a little weird. I mean, your timing, but it's like, hey, he's been in contact with Cecile because he had someone he could talk to about, figuring things out, especially about the whole him and Keon situation, and also like how far he went trying to bring Frost back and how he could never really fully let go. I mean, especially these past episodes have been about grief and accepting that grief and finding peace there, and that darkness that is always going to be there with you, but you're going to have to make peace with it. That's a lesson that Wally hadn't learned in episode 9, and in the crossover episode Barry learned last episode, coming to peace with his like mom and dad and everything. So I thought that was so fascinating, but I knew something was up with Mark. Because it was also suspicious. The fact is that Allegra was like, oh, hey, before she got knocked out, like it was someone she recognized. That didn't even click in my head until later on. The moment Mark started going off, like, no, it was before that, when he started talking weird about like, oh, we got to make sure we all survive before Barry like, I was like, I mean, I get it, you're gonna be all hurrah team Barry, but like him being the one that said that felt weird to me. I was like, something's off. I was like, it's Mark, isn't it? Because it's not actually Mark, it's something disguised as Mark. Didn't even cross my mind to think like, oh, it's got to be possessing the actual Mark. So it's like interesting. Once again, while Joe's being possessed in the past, Mark is being possessed in the present. Which now begs the question, because this is a war on multiple fronts, on multiple time frames, who's getting possessed in the future is going to be the biggest, thing. Which I don't know. I mean, it makes sense why the respective hosts got chosen. Like, you have Joe being chosen because it's like, cool, you want to stop me, Barry? You're going to have to kill your father. It's like, oh, let's also pick a time frame where you're going to be at your most vulnerable, a place that's going to cause like you some mental and emotional damage. The night your mom died, it's going to cause a lot of turmoil for you. This is the perfect battlefield to like take you, because your mom's going to be so like, it's so befitting for this to be the one, like, on my attempt to destroy you is also the attempt of my avatar to come and try and destroy you as well. So, but the moment he, like, was going off on Keon, calling her a monster and everything, especially because she hadn't fully embraced what she is, especially when, because she tried to help, the two at, the Star Citizen, but because she ended up like, it's like, right, I planted seeds in their body to make them be able to breathe again, because of the Halion like gas that it had consumed. And that is kind of, I was like, oh, is their skin going, I mean, it's going to take a while, but their skin is very greenish in this moment. And it's like, oh, that sucks. And she's like, I don't know who you are, but stay away from it. It's like, she saved your lives, and so you kind of treated her like a monster. But it also, I guess, maybe that was the whole point, that quote-unquote Mark wanted, because I wanted to say all these things to Keon about how monstrous she is, and like, you're supposed to be a hero but you're not. It's because like right, you have to get Keon out of the way, because currently she is the most powerful person on that team right now, but she's even more powerful than she realizes because she hasn't fully embraced what she is. And so systematically you're getting the rest of the team out of the way so that you can go after Iris. Especially because that ties into the Eddie stuff too, because Eddie's hearing that voice of find her. So this is what this is all about. It's like, I want to destroy your legacy. I want to destroy your entire... He's like, I'm not going to stop until the entire Allen family is dead. It's like, I'm trying to kill this, and not just Barry. The only way I can destroy Barry is by destroying every fabric, because that deep-seated hatred that Eobard had was only, like, it's so interesting how that's become so intertwined with the negative Speed Force. It's like, dude, I hate you. I hate you so much. I wanted to obliterate every fabric of anything related to the Allens. Throughout all of time, that's the only way I'm going to have any peace, because you stepped in my way so many times. You destroyed my avatar. To be fair, he was his own destruction, because his very obsession with Barry led to his destruction on multiple fronts, his losses on so many fronts. And it's like, it seems like the forces are supposed to be above such human things, but you are given into your human emotion of rage. I mean, that's what you feed on. You feed on the negativity, the rage, and all that anger. And it's like, it's consuming you in this moment that you are doing what you're doing. Why now of all points in time? I mean, I guess it's just kind of like, I've had, like, maybe it's barely hanging on and it needs to make its final desperate move to destroy. I mean, it's also like, you can't get rid of the negative Speed Force. Like, it has to exist because there has to be balance with the positive Speed Forces. That's just like the equilibrium of the universe. So it was always going to come back. They knew it was going to pick a new avatar. We saw at the end of season 8 and that it was going to be some point in the future. I don't know if they specified at what point in time, but now you're kind of getting some inkling with Eddie's side of things, but we'll get to that in a second. I mean, I even love the sad and, like I said, love, that sounds so twisted to say it, but it's like the parallel of the night Eobard was there to kill Barry. What did he do? He killed Barry's mom. It's like, well, I'm going to be on the flip side of this present day. I'm going to kill Iris and Nora while she's still in the womb. So that's all kinds of, but you can tell, like, it's that exact parallel, because that's all happening while, you know, everything's going down present day. I mean, while everything's going down present day, like, that's kind of like the motions that the negative Speed Force is moving towards, you know, in the past as well. But luckily, the Speed Force showed up, but she's dealing with, her and the other forces, I can assume, are just dealing with the negative Speed Forces who've returned. So she's fighting a war on multiple fronts, too. Even she couldn't, because what's also interesting, too, is even though Barry was in the past, he's being taken out of space and time, because even the Speed Force, she's like, I can't feel Barry. Like, their connection is being severed. Not completely severed, but it's being kind of like stretched so thin, I think she can't latch onto him. And so she can't stay in this realm of existence, like, especially because she's fighting on the other side of, on the more cosmic side of celestial thing, that entities that they are. She's fighting on that front as well. And she brought Keon back, and it's like, right, human emotions, they can be a beautiful thing that give us strength, but it can also be something that heavily weighs you down. She's like, you got so caught up in your human emotions, you didn't see what was right in front of you, that Mark wasn't really Mark. This has to be something you have to do, because you're the only one. That's why Mark wanted you out of the way, why the negative Speed Force needed you out of the way, because of what you are. You're on the same level, if not even higher above them, because this episode answers the question of, well, what is Keon? And my initial thought was, well, she had to be a force, like, right? Like the Speed Force, like the negative Speed Force. But the way she described it, she's like, I'm actually... not, she's like, not exactly, whereas they're kind of a force of different things, whether it's like a force like the Speed Force or the what was it, like the physical force, is that what the Steel Force, like Dion is. She's kind of like she represents, and that's why her powers manifest the way they did. It's like, it's not just Frost ability, she also has like plant-like abilities and stuff like that, because she's attuned to every element. So she's kind of, she's like, I'm a goddess. So I'm like, so you're literally like the personification of Gaia, aren't you? Which is so interesting because I would treat the speed force, I treat the force, maybe they're kind of like, they're universal elements, but maybe she's the same thing too. Like maybe she is like earth-based element, but she's kind of like a force that represents all on this earth, where it's like, don't the other forces kind of represent everything in the universe and not just everything earth-based? Maybe that's just a misunderstanding on my front, but yeah, how she dealt with Mark, it's like, oh, the only way you're going to be able to save Mark is, to stop me, is you have to kill me, which is not the case, because Barry was able to save, but I guess it also learned from Joe's circumstances, because Joe just held the crystal. This time it fused the crystal with Mark, so maybe in this case the only way to kill stop me is to kill Mark, because Barry didn't have to do that. He just but maybe it could be the power he had like ended up charging and like surging and removing the crystal that way. Keon literally turned him to dirt, literally broke him down into his element, returned him to the earth, and then rose him up again, like she grew him all over again. I was like, that's metal as hell, but also it's like, that's with the snap of the finger she was able to do that. It's like, you're on some Infinity Stones crap like right now, which is wild. She does later on say, like, she realizes that she can't just be with this team. Like, she has a larger purpose. She can't just be here to help this city, this town, it's like, or this team. I have to leave eventually because she has a bigger calling out there. It's the same, because Oliver knew too, because he's like, oh, I know what you are. Like, because his duty is to guard the multiverse. So she's in a similar situation where it's like, I can't just guard this entire city. I've got to guard this entire earth. I have my role to play in all of this, so that was kind of interesting. There's also Iris's circumstances in this episode, like why she was why this hit her so hard in particular. Like, for one, it's like, right, you having Nora, so that's also a scary thing of like Barry's gone and you have no answers to how, because it's the thing of Barry's always come back no matter what circumstances. Even when he was destined to disappear in Crisis, he managed to come back. Which I thought that was nice how they tied that back in this regard, because I didn't even think about like how stressful that was going to be for her, especially this far along in the pregnancy, because for her, and especially because she stumbled across the article, she's like, I thought I deleted it afterward, but there was a backup of it, a reminder of my worst nightmare. The original Nora grew up in a timeline where her dad died in Crisis, but luckily we changed all that, because her and Barry, like, with the exception of when she was in the Mirrorverse, he's always come back. Obviously that was more on her side of things of being kind of locked away in the Mirrorverse with the whole Eva situation, but Barry has always come back, and it's like, right, especially after Crisis, I don't have to worry about it, and it's like, now it's a situation I'm scared. What if history's like happening again? What if something is working so hard above and beyond to make it so that Barry isn't here a second time around? It's like, I was so hopeful. I was thinking like, okay, good. Barry survived Crisis. That means he's going to be here eventually when we have Nora, and he's going to be there in her life again. You've run into Nora and Bart previously, so you already knew that like everything was going to be fine, but now it's just like, what if things are changing yet again? And that's a scary thing. And that message she had left for Barry, it's like, right, Gideon, record this and only let Barry hear it. It's like, I know something's working against us, but she's like, I want to believe, I know you'll be back no matter where you are. Like, we are connected. That's the whole reason why Barry was sent off on his own, because it's like, hey, it's easier to deal with Barry when he doesn't have his team support. His team also doesn't have him, so that's why you needed to attack on both fronts to try and take them out. But even then, you couldn't. No matter what. The easiest thing to do was to destroy his lightning rod, because she's the foundation. She is so important to him. It's like, if you're able to destroy her, everything related to the islands, like your future legacy, and then on top of that end up dismantling the team at the same time too, so they can't bring Barry back or help or interfere, then the negative Speed Force could truly win in that moment. So all of that's happening. I love the reveals about the Eddie circumstances, because the moment he walked into the police station, I was like, okay, this is weird. They're all looking at him like they know him, but I was like, why would you know him? I was like, isn't this a different Earth? And then there was a picture of Ed. It wasn't until we saw the captain, I was like, that's not Kristen. I was like, oh, is this a different Earth? Are you the captain on this Earth? I didn't even really pay attention to the fact that she's got gray in her hair, but she immediately knew Eddie. So I was like, oh, was there another Earth where Eddie ended up dying or something? Like, is this Earth fairly close to ours? Then it wasn't until he was on the streets I saw the 2049. I was like, you're in the future. So this isn't a different Earth. It's still Earth Prime. You're just in the future. It's like, well, why pop up here now? Like, has he been living a life here in 2049 the entire time? He just had no memories of who he was, and maybe the negative speed force tracked him down, because it's specifically trying to make him remember Eddie Thawne. Like, he somehow woke up with a new identity. Because whatever is happening, it's rewriting reality. Because he showed the captain his because I was like, wait, you're the captain in this timeline, because it's years down the road, which makes me wonder what's Kristen's new position if she's not there in that capacity. I was like, oh, interesting. I wondered, does she eventually take Singh's position or something? But the moment Eddie, or rather Malcolm, pulled out his like license or whatever, it was blank until like something just magically wrote his existence up there. So I guess he's been filled with these fake memories, but like obviously he has a job and everything. So it's like, I guess like after the events of season 1, because obviously I guess it's maybe publicly not known whatever happened to Eddie. I don't know. Because they did have a casket and everything, and I was like, "Oh, are you gonna find your body in there?" And that was so stupid, because I was like, "Right, of course his body's not going to be there, because they had nothing to bury. His body got sucked into the vortex at the end of season 1, which obviously started off season 2 as well, and led to Ronnie's sacrifice and everything." Either way, slowly but surely, those memories of his are starting to come back as Eddie. He had to go try and find... He saw a picture of, I believe... No, something triggered in him that he needs to go find Iris. He ended up tracking her down. I mean, he broke into our office. Then he was remembering his death, and he went to dig up his own grave. He's like, I need to remember... And ultimately the grave is empty, and he fully remembers everything, who he is and what he did. It's like, I sacrificed myself. And all of a sudden the bullet wound appears, and he's able to pull the bullet out. So I'm like, what are you, are you a walking corpse? Like, what is your circumstances? What's going on here? Like, whatever this is seems like it predates this negative speed force fight. Like, it seems like the negative speed force probably only just found you at the end of last season, but because of timey-wiminess, you never know, like, that's been something that's been in the back burner since season 8's finale, or maybe that just finally happened, that the negative speed force was able to kind of pick itself up off the ground after after Eobard's defeat at the end of season 8, and now is able to finally make its move. And once again, Eddie in the future is the final piece to the puzzle. Once again, this is where it kind of, like, this is like the negative speed force's first loss was back then. So for it to kind of, Eddie to kind of been the catalyst for that, and for him to be also the catalyst for this end, is once again poetic, just how that all finally comes full circle completely in that regard. So I'm so interested to find out what that's all about. And also, the fact is that Barry's getting zapped away again. I can only assume he's going to end up in the future. So I guess we're going to have at least one more Nora and Bart adventure. Like, I think they're going to be the main ones we kind of, like, follow maybe in part 3 of this. Or maybe, I mean, I'm sure Barry's also going to be there too, but I think it's all going to culminate with all of them in part 4 in the series finale. But we'll ultimately have to wait to see how this ultimately all ends up playing out, and where the next episode ends up taking us with all of this. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.